Why I Believe in God. This is part 6 of a 7-part series. In each part, I explore a keyword that starts with the letters of the word B-E-L-I-E-V-E, believe. In this part, part 6, I explore V for victory. I believe in God because God has won the victory. So what does the word victory mean? In English, it means an act of defeating an enemy or opponent in a battle, game, or other competition. So there are 3 components involved in the victory. First, there is a battle that needs to be fought. Second, there is a price that needs to be paid. And third, there is a reward that needs to be won. I repeat, a battle to be fought, a price to be paid, and a reward to be won. So let's explore each of these 3 components. Component number 1. With every victory comes a battle. This is the battle between good and evil, between being holy and committing sin, between acknowledging a wrongdoing and supporting a wrongdoing. In my daily life, I'm constantly faced with making a choice. But what determines the choices I make? If there was no God, I would choose to do the things that pleased me over others, or I would choose to do things that had the greatest good or had the most benefit, rather than do what is right. I would choose to be selfish. For example, at home, I would choose to not help my wife and kids with household tasks if it was not convenient for me. At work, I would choose to not help any of my colleagues if it meant that I would have to give up some of my lunch time or stay late after work. In the streets, I would not reach out to help the homeless or those unfortunate than me, as that would cost me something. In the company of my friends, I would choose to support their inappropriate actions, even if these actions caused damage to another property or well-being. But because I believe in God, I must fight the battle between good and evil, and consciously choose to do good even if it cost me some sacrifice, even if it cost me some pain, even if it cost me some hurt, even if it cost me some loss of my personal time, and I lose some of my friendships and there is some chance of ridicule. For example, at home, I can choose to spend quality time with my wife and kids and help out in household chores. Why? Because I love my family with my whole heart and soul. At work, I could choose to respect my colleagues and share in their efforts and help in any way I can. Why? Because I want them to grow in their careers and support them to achieve their ambitions. In the streets, I will choose to reach out to the homeless and those less able than me. Why? Because I see in them the dignity that God gave them, and I see myself as a small instrument of God's work in their lives. With my friends, I will choose to not support any action that is antisocial or causes damage. Why? Because I believe in God who is right and just and who would not be too happy with this behavior. So why am I using God as my moral compass? Why am I not choosing to use my own judgment and to decide by myself what is good or bad? This is because of what I heard Ravi Zacharias say when I listened to one of his YouTube videos. He said there is only one angle at which we can stand straight. At any other angle, there is a good chance that we can fall. Now this sentence has profound meaning for me. There is only one angle at which we may stand straight. At any other angle, there is a good chance that we can fall. So in this world today, it means that we cannot rely on ourselves, or I cannot rely on myself to decide what is good or bad. When I look around, I see people have become more tolerant of things that in the past were considered immoral. And the new generation is now no longer able to recognize right from wrong. Today, a marriage breakdown is so common, people just accept it as normal. Today, living without a partner out of marriage or having kids out of marriage is so common. people just take it as normal. Today, to go out on a binge drinking night with your friends is so common. It is just accepted as normal. Today, to live a sinful and immoral life is so common. I've had colleagues come into work the next morning and brag about their exploits. It is so common, it is just accepted as normal. Today, in university campuses, to watch indecent images over the internet is so common. People just say everybody's doing it, so it must be right. Today, it is just so common to have one's kids expelled from school. It is common to have kids vandalize the neighborhood property. It is so normal to abandon your loved ones when they grow old. Everything is just being accepted as normal, and with this, the concept of good or bad is disappearing because of the reason that everybody's doing it. So what does it matter? And that's the justification for doing it, even if the inner conscience tells you that it is bad. It is because of this reason where everybody is doing it, where everything is becoming normal, that I have to rely more on something that is outside of me. I need to rely on a God who is my moral lawgiver. Without God as the moral lawgiver, I will hear more stories of what I heard today. Today I was in a phone conversation with someone who told me that they know of a woman who is desperate to know if her unborn baby is a girl so that she can abort it, and she is willing to continue to abort subsequent babies until she gets a male son. So in her eyes, she feels she is not doing anything wrong. She has the right to decide for herself what is good or bad. It is her body and she is not breaking any law of society. So having looked at component number 1, where with every victory comes a battle to choose between good and evil, let's move on to the second component, which is with every victory there is a price to be paid. Actually, if you think about it, there is a price to be paid for everything. Nothing in this world comes free. Whether I choose good or bad, I still have to pay the price. So what do I mean by this? It means that when I'm selfish, I have to pay the price that my selfish actions may have hurt another person, and in turn I have lowered myself in my own self-esteem. When I am greedy and gorge myself like a glutton with food deserving of a king, I have to pay the price in accepting the illness that in olden days only befell on kings, such as obesity and everything that comes with it. When I am dishonest or untrustworthy, I have to pay the price that my colleagues will not recommend me for any task that requires someone of integrity, be that in accounting matters or in locking up valuables in a shop or in taking a job that is about protecting a person's or company's valuables. So if there's a price to be paid for doing wrong, there's also a price to be paid for doing the right thing. So when I choose to be good at home, I may have to pay the price that my wife and kids will yawn and call me a beau. When I choose to be good at work, I will have to pay the price that my work colleagues may shun me and not include me in their discussions or activities. In public, if I choose to be good, I will have to pay the price of giving up my time, my money, or if there is an accident, to provide a statement at the scene of that accident. With friends, if I choose to be good, I may face their ridicule and be called names such as a God lover or a tree hugger. So if I have to pay a price anyway, whether I do good or bad, then why not choose to do bad? At least by doing bad, I have self-gratification and temporary pleasure. With doing good, I do not even have that. That is because when I do good, and I choose to do good, although I do not get physical pleasure, what I do get is a self-denial of my physical self, which results in the purification of my spiritual self. Take for example an incident which happened to a work colleague of mine in 2010. He was driving to work and there was a lot of snow on the ground that morning. A naughty kid threw a huge snowball at his car, which infuriated him. He instinctively stopped his car and ran over to the kid and held the kid and began telling the kid off. The kid's mother appeared and began shouting at my work colleague and called in the police. The police acknowledged that what they were doing was beyond reason, but they still had to take this work colleague to the police station and put him on the register that banned him from ever working with young children for the rest of his life. Now, when my work colleague recounted this incident at the office, I could not help but think about the mother of the boy. I began to wonder why she took the particular action. What was her moral compass? Whom was she relying on to decide whether to do the right thing or to do the wrong thing? I compared this woman to my mother and asked what would my mother have done if my mother was in the same position as this woman. I can say that I am 100% sure that my mother, having the fear of God in her, would have apologized for my wrongdoing and would have made it very clear to me in no uncertain terms that what I did was wrong and that I should not repeat this again. Thinking about the mother of the child who called the police, she has to pay a price. She has to pay a price that by supporting the incorrect action of her son, she has taken her son one step further towards accepting bad as acceptable. This incident is just one of the many accidents or incidents happening all around me today. I hear of so many incidents where people who do not have a moral compass and hence are deciding for themselves about what is right or wrong. I've heard work colleagues say, "Am I not intellectual enough to be able to decide for myself what is right, what is wrong?" I have thought a lot about it. I always think life is a spiral, so we are either spiraling upwards towards goodness and morality or downwards towards evil and immorality. I hear of parents who, instead of correcting their kids for not wearing the proper uniform at school, instead direct abuse at the school teachers and the school principal. I've heard of parents who spend a fortune in hiring a limousine and giving their kids a big birthday bash even when their kids are just tiny and they themselves cannot afford it or the occasion does not merit it. I've heard of families of criminals trying every loophole in the law in order to get a lighter sentence or to get their criminal relative free. I hear of schools and colleges handing out contraceptives to young kids in the name of preventing the spread of disease. I hear of campaigns led by families who, when they hear that their son or daughter has strayed from the right path, they, in order to get the wrongdoing greater acceptability in society, they push for acceptance of society by society of that son's or daughter's wrongdoing, so that it is no longer wrong but becomes right. I hear of big companies that use their financial strength to push their own agenda forward, even if that is to the detriment of people's health and well-being. I hear of scientists who, instead of using their intelligence to see the workings of God in the laws of nature, instead use their position and role model to lead so many away from God by saying that now that we can explain lightning and we can explain the rainbow, why do we need God? I hear of people milking the system just because they know that everyone else is doing it, such as claiming benefits, claiming expenses, buying rail tickets that involve them getting off and on at the same station just to save a few pounds here and there. I know of people who do not disclose the correct age of their kids when buying tickets. The rationale I get is that all of these are harmless crimes and that I am not hurting anyone. But is it really harmless? Am I justified in doing any of these harmless crimes? Is it right for a young girl that I watched on YouTube video today to gorge herself on food so that she can become a 1,000-pound model? The reason she gives for eating so much food is that she wants to be a queen and have everybody around her waiting on her. Surely, in her eyes, she is not hurting anyone, but there is a price to be paid, which is not being paid by her alone, but that price is being paid by those around her as well, her family, her friends, and the society around her. So what is the price to be paid by such a society that is spiraling down towards accepting everything immoral as normal and therefore acceptable? The price is a big one. It is when people become numb and there is no fear of wrongdoing that more harm is done to society. The laws in our society need to be strengthened to constantly close any loopholes. The laws in our society have to be increased to cover areas that previously did not need laws. The number of CCTV cameras have to be increased. The amount of data collected has to be increased so that audit trails can be conducted to check that no wrong actions have been done. The number of police needed at events and venues has to be increased. The security needs to be beefed up during sensitive gatherings. The insurance paid has to be increased to cover false insurance claims. The cost of goods has to be increased to cover the cost of shoplifting and increased security. The amount of social security benefits provided to people needs to be increased. And this is just the price on the physical realm. There is also the hidden price that people pay at the spiritual realm, even if they accept it or not. They pay the price through psychological disorders such as emptiness, loneliness, depression, manic behavior, self-defeating actions, and self-destructive thoughts. So having explored that with a victory, first comes a battle, then comes a prize, let's move on to the third component, which is, with victory, there comes the reward that is to be won by those who have chosen good over evil. That reward comes not from this world, but from outside this world. It is the reward of the soul, that is, given the freedom to be free from the chains and bondages of this world. The reward is in the form of being able to be free from addiction of any kind, be it smoking, drinking, drugs, pornography, or immoral behavior. The reward is in the form of being able to seek forgiveness from someone outside of this world who is able to forgive me for all the times I have slipped and not chosen good over bad. By seeking forgiveness, I humble myself and acknowledge my incorrect and immoral actions. I accept that I need strength to choose to do the right thing even when the world says that it is all right to do the wrong thing. And I seek freedom from guilt over those wrongdoings. This shedding of guilt is so good for my moral being because as it allows me to lighten the weight on my soul and helps me rise up towards even more goodness. The reward is also in the form of spiritual strength which is needed to be a light to the world around me, to shine that light of goodness where there is darkness and where it is accepted that everyone is doing it so it isn't wrong. In conclusion, as I ponder on V for Victory, I read the following passage from the Herald magazine called Two Gardens by George Eldridge. When we read that our Lord entered the garden outside Jerusalem called Gethsemane, we are immediately reminded of another garden, the Garden of Eden. The contrasts between the two are indeed striking. Eden was delightful and perfect. Gethsemane was dark and foreboding. In Eden, Adam and Eve spoke with the enemy, Satan. In Gethsemane, Jesus sought his Father in prayer. It was in Eden that Adam sinned. It was in Gethsemane that Jesus agonized over the suffering for that sin. Eden was the scene of Adam's fall. Our Lord stood forth when they came for him in Gethsemane. The conflict of Eden took place in the daytime. Gethsemane's conflict occurred at night. In Eden, Adam fell before Satan. In Gethsemane, the soldiers fell before Christ. The race that was to come from Adam was lost in Eden. In Gethsemane, Christ lost none of them which God had given him. Adam took the preferred fruit from Eve in Eden.